Tell me when we're ready to go. Thank you.
Still having people filter in. Okay, Cindy, I'll start the recording and then I think you're good to go when you're ready.
Good evening.
Recording in progress.
Good evening. At this time, we're going to start the public meeting for the Rincon Phase 2 Decommissioning Draft Environmental Impact Report. It's May 2nd, 2024 at 6 p.m. Welcome and thank you all for coming. We appreciate your interest in the environmental review of this project. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that the project areas are located on the traditional territory and homelands of the Chumash people. Since time immemorial, the Chumash have lived on this coast, fished in these waters in a relationship of balance and sustainability. Through informed, intentional action, we demonstrate our respect for our ongoing trust relationship with the Chumash, who are essential stewardship partners of the state lands and resources. My name is Cynthia Herzog. I'm a senior environmental scientist with the California State Lands Commission, Division of Environmental Science, Planning, and Management, and I'm overseeing the preparation of the Environmental Impact Report, or EIR, in compliance with the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA. With me today is Nicole Dabrowski, Chief of the Division, and Simon Poulter and Jennifer Layton of Padre Associates, and Katie Robinson Phillip is helping us remotely. First, I'd like to go over a few logistics and details. There are sign-in sheets available in the back, so we can have a complete record of attendance at the meeting, and so that you can be added to our mailing list to receive notices regarding the EIR and the project. We also have speaker slips in the back table for those who would like to speak on the content of the draft EIR. The slips can also be used to provide brief written comments on the back of the form. You can also email or mail your comments to the relevant addresses in the notice of availability, also in the back. Additional copies are available in the back, or you can get a copy from us if you need. The 60-day comment period will end on May 15th, 2024. Next slide, please. Katie, could you discuss the Zoom rules for our attendees?
Yes, thank you. For those that are participating via Zoom, again, this meeting, this virtual portion of the meeting is only available during this evening portion. All of the attendees will be muted during the presentation. At the end of the presentation, we will take verbal comments. Once we are ready for verbal comments, if you could please use the raise hand feature, and we'll call on you to speak in the order in which you've raised your hand. If you're dialing in via phone, you'll hit *9 to raise your hand. And then just as a note, this meeting is being recorded.
Thanks, Katie. If you could go to the next slide, please. The meeting agenda will consist of an introduction and meeting purpose, background and proposed project description, the CEQA process, public comments, followed by closing remarks. This is the second of 2 sessions. If you have already spoken or submitted comments at the first session, you do not need to speak again unless you would like to make a new comment. Next slide, please. The purpose of this meeting is to obtain agency, tribal, and public input and comment on the draft EIR. All oral comments presented today will be recorded and transcribed and joined with written comments to inform the Commission's final analysis of the project. Next slide. Rincon Island is located approximately 3,000 feet offshore of Punta Gorda in Ventura County, approximately 7 miles northwest of the city of Ventura, and is located in approximately 50 feet of water. A causeway connects the island to the coast. On the landward end, the causeway is connected to an abutment that is surrounded by a protective rock revetment. The onshore facility consists of a 6-acre parcel owned by the state, located 1.3 miles to the east of Rincon Island, off of the Pacific Coast Highway. A state coastal conservancy parcel, included in the decommissioning analysis, is located just east of the causeway landing. Next slide. The 3 phases of Rincon planning and decommissioning are shown on the current slide. Phase 1 of the Rincon decommissioning included the plugging and abandonment of all oil and gas wells and removal of surface equipment at Rincon Island, the onshore facility, and the adjacent privately owned Coast Ranch parcel, and removal, of the oil and gas pipelines from the causeway. Phase 1 activities were completed in June 2021. Phase 2 of the Rincon decommissioning effort, our current phase, includes preparation of the feasibility study, which was completed in August of 2022, public outreach, analysis, and preparation of the EIR, and finally the Commission's certification of the EIR and their approval of a specific project. Phase 3 will consist of securing funding and implementation of the project decommissioning plan selected by the Commission after the CEQA process is complete. Next slide. These photos show the current condition of Rincon Island and the wharf. As you can see, very few structures remain on the island. The island is currently under caretaker status, which includes daily monitoring. Next slide. Here are photos of the onshore facility and the pipeline connection valve box landward of the causeway, where the pipeline decommissioning would take place. Next slide. Finally, this photo shows the State Coastal Conservancy parcel located adjacent to the base of the causeway, which is also included as part of the proposed project. Next slide. The flowchart shown here was prepared to clarify the Phase 2 decision process and reiterate that the process allows for ongoing public, tribal, and agency engagement. AB 52 tribal consultation is taking place as part of the CEQA process. The red line box indicates where we are in the process. Next slide. A feasibility study was prepared as a preliminary concept level study to support Commission selection of a proposed project for analysis in the EIR. The final feasibility study was released on July 21st, 2022, and can be found on the Commission's website. On August 23rd, 2022, the Commission approved staff's recommendations for selection of a project to be analyzed in the EIR. Next slide. At the same meeting, the Commission voted to exclude the complete removal of Rincon Island from analysis in the EIR. Next slide. Additionally, the Commission discussed the potential for future co-management opportunities with the coastal band of the Chumash Nation. These discussions are ongoing. Next slide, please. At this time, I would like to turn the presentation over to Simon to discuss the EIR process.
Thank you, Cindy. My name is Simon Poulter. I'm a principal with Padre Associates. I'm joined by Jen Layton to my right, who was the project manager for preparation of both the feasibility study and the EIR, which is currently under review. This diagram outlines where we are in the current process of preparing this environmental impact report. As some of you who participated in the earlier scoping for this EIR provided us input that led to the contents that you see in the resulting environmental review document. We are anticipating, once we complete receiving all of the public comments and agency comments, preparing responses to those comments, and subsequently completing the final environmental impact report. That report will help then allow the decision makers to understand the potential outcomes of the decision there and certify the EIR. Next slide, please. As Cindy outlined in her presentation, the proposed project that was recommended based on the completion of the feasibility study and the direction of the State Lands Commission was included the following components. Removal of all the remaining structures on the surface of the island, the small buildings that are remaining, and the completion of the remediation of soil within the caisson or center of the island from previous oil and gas development. The retention of the causeway in its current configuration, no changes to that. The decommissioning of the remaining onshore pipeline segments that go under Highway 101. And then finally, some improvements to the SCC parcel. Within the SCC parcel, we did include 3 options to address potential restoration of that site, one including native revegetation and access improvements. The second included the addition of a cobble back berm to protect that area. And then the third option was actually to replace, instead of the cobble, to use riprap similar to what is located on either side of that parcel. And then the final component of the proposed project is the remediation of the onshore facility from soil and groundwater contamination that resulted from historic oil and gas operations. Within the remedial options that were looked at within those projects, there were 5 options looked at, ranging from complete removal of the contamination through active excavation and removal to on-site treatment and eventual replacement of that material. More details on those options are provided in the EIR. Next slide, please. As part of the environmental impact review process, we did do an analysis of physical, biological, and social cultural issues that are mandated under the CEQA guidelines. These issue areas are identified in this slide. In addition to the standard items, we also looked at cumulative impacts, growth inducement, climate change, sea level rise, commercial and recreational fishing, and finally environmental justice. Next slide, please. As required by CEQA, we also reviewed a number of project alternatives. Unlike other projects where a proposed project may have significant impacts and you identify alternatives to address those impacts, we, because of the completion of the feasibility study, had already identified a project that addressed most of the major impacts that could potentially occur. So therefore, these alternatives may not totally meet the guidelines of CEQA, but they do address a range of reasonable alternatives that were brought up during the course of the public scoping process. The first was reefing, and this was the removal of retention of the island, remediation of the contaminated soil within the center of the island, but removal of the causeway and returning of the abutment on the nearshore side to a natural condition with the remaining riprap to stay in place. The next one was a partial causeway removal, which it could basically be described as turning the causeway into a short pier on the onshore end. The other was, the third item was the abutment and revetment retention, which was the removal of the causeway and retention of the abutment rock. The fifth was a offshore disposal option, which addressed the removal of the contaminated soil from the center of the island, which would use a barge and vessel option which would transport that material to Port Hueneme, eliminating those truck trips through the community for the removal of the soil, so it would definitely reduce the number of trips. And finally, as mandated by CEQA, we did a no project alternative. Next slide, please. As part of the EIR analysis and a result of some of the feedback we got on the feasibility study, a number of technical studies were used to help prepare the EIR, and these studies are included as appendices in support of the document. The first study was prepared by Griggs and is basically focused on sand retention on either side of the existing causeway right-of-way. And in particular, the focus of this study looked at the impacts of the construction of that causeway and associated riprap on sand conditions on either side of the causeway. That study concluded that the causeway in and of itself was not the primary driver for sand retention in the area, but actually the rock, naturally occurring rock point that occurred at the site prior to the construction of the island and still remains there. The third study that we looked at actually addressed questions that were being raised regarding impacts on surfing, particularly if the causeway was removed. This study done by Coastal Frontiers looked at what surfing dynamics were occurring in the area. This study, just paraphrasing the conclusions since it was quite an involved study, looked at there really is no impact on surfing from the removal of either the causeway or the abutment. That is because the surf break actually is being more influenced by the natural occurring rock headland that occurs at the site and again was part of the sand retention prior to the construction of the causeway and the island itself. The third study that we looked at was actually looking at the increased bird usage of the island since the end of oil and gas operations. At this point, we are looking at predominantly use by brown pelicans, cormorants, gulls, and rock pigeons during roosting. No nesting has been noted on the site at this point, but the island is obviously providing some benefit for overnight roosting of these bird populations. And finally, a marine biological study was done on the causeway pilings to supplement the previous done biological study that looked at the island itself. This determined that although the pilings on the causeway did provide some habitat, that the fact that the natural rocky areas that are adjacent to these pilings provide substantially greater potential habitat than the pilings themselves. So these studies, again, are technical appendices within the document. So that concludes mine, and I turn it back over to Cindy.
Thank you, Simon. The draft EIR was released for public review on March 15th, 2024. This public meeting is solely to hear comments on the draft EIR. The Commission is not taking any action on the project today. Additionally, while other governmental agencies may rely on this EIR for their own independent actions or approvals in the future, the Commission is not taking any action to either support or oppose any actions or approvals by other agencies. We will now open up for comments on the draft EIR. Next slide, please. Staff will not be responding to comments at this time unless there is a question regarding process and next steps. Comments we are interested in receiving may address specific components of the analysis regarding significant environmental impacts or proposed mitigation by providing substantive comments that point out errors, inconsistencies, or data omissions. They should provide references, evidence, or other factual support for the comment, and should be objective instead of a personal opinion. While submitting personal views on the proposed project is not prohibited, these types of non-substantive comments may not receive a specific response in the final EIR. Please try to limit your testimony to 3 minutes and to these issues. The comments will be recorded, so please speak as clearly as possible and begin by stating your name. Your comments will become part of the administrative record. Next slide, please. Jennifer, do we have any speaker slips from those who are attending in person? Then we will move on to those who are calling in on Zoom.
Thank you, Cindy. So for our first public commenter,
Jen, we're going to do the people that are in house first.
oh, okay, I didn't realize there were speakers.
That's
Sorry.
okay. Yeah.
Our first public speaker in the room is Philip Begel. Apologies if I mispronounced it. Please approach this podium and state your name for the record.
Yeah, my name is Philip Begul. I'm the chairman of the Santa Barbara County Fish and Wildlife Commission for the last 41 years. I'm not speaking on behalf of the county at this point. I haven't really had a chance. This is the first time I've heard you guys are doing the EIR, so I haven't had a chance to really review it, so I can't speak directly to any particular thing that you've already determined. But in general, I'd just like to say that Rock Island is a huge renewable lobster resource that provides both commercial and sport lobster fishing, and it's important that the sport and commercial fishermen continue to have access to fish around the Rock Island. It's also would be a very valuable resource to people of the state to use for aquaculture or other marine research, the causeway and the island, and also make a good nucleus to do some continued reef work around it, artificial reefs, expanding what's already there. You know, it's important, nice, you know, like I say, this may already be in your EIR, but the lobster resource and the fisheries resources, you know, belong to the people of the state. Commercial fishermen fish by proxy for those people and provide them access to people that otherwise wouldn't have access to the resources that belong to them. So anyway, thank you. It looks like you guys are already done a lot of good work.
Thank you for your comment. Our next speaker is Jeff Mason. Please
Good afternoon.
state your name for the record.
My name is Jeff Mawson.
Oh, Mawson.
Currently, I'm a commercial fisherman. I dive, harvest sea urchins in the Santa Barbara Channel. Been doing it for about 35 years. I probably have 20,000 miles underwater. If you want to see what it looks like, log into my YouTube channel. But at any rate, the reason I'm here is I'm a member of Commercial Fishermen of Santa Barbara, Ventura County Commercial Fishermen Association, and I sit on the board with Mr. Phil Begul of the Santa Barbara Fish and Wildlife Committee. There's several other things I'm involved with as well, like California Sea Urchin Divers Network. And so the island is very important to commercial sport and recreational opportunities. So I'm representing Ventura County here, and it may be redundant, excuse me for being, I haven't had an opportunity either to read the draft. But during the remediation and during the removal of the dirt, the Ventura lobster fishermen are particularly worried about some period of time that they may be excluded from access, particularly during their season, which is only 6 months during the year. So we would like to ask of you to consider the season for lobster, and if there is any exclusion zones for danger or potential for injury, to do that on the outside of the lobster season. Other than that, I would agree that it's a fabulous flourishing habitat by accident, and it could use nurturing, expanding, as well as outplanting of kelp and regenerating, making sure those ecosystems continue to thrive and exist, particularly since it's the only the major rock reef between Carpinteria and Ventura, so it provides connectivity to those other areas with spillover. Another thing, and I'll close with this, that I'd like to say is that if it is closed, or if it does revert to some kind of a marine reserve, or if fishermen are excluded from that, that would involve the commercial fishermen to have to go out to the Channel Islands, which would exacerbate the compaction problem that perhaps came from the institution of marine reserves. And there will be more coming. So there's less area to fish to provide fish to the community, and with the loss of that, because it is highly productive. And I'm getting hot. The heater's working great. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment. Do we have anyone else in the room who would like to give a comment? Okay, Katie, we are done with in-person comments, if you'd like to proceed with online comments.
Thank you. So for our first commenter, we have Paul Burke.
Thank you. I'm Paul Burke. For the NAACP of Ventura County, I'm the Environmental and Climate Justice Chair. We're working on more comments by May 15th. People can read our draft on the web of those comments on the web at ourwater.us. Our first comment today is we support the plan to keep Rincon Island and the Access Causeway. While they won't be used for public access in the short term, that's an important option long term to provide public experiences at the ocean as sea level rise removes our beaches. Second comment is about noise in the ocean. Breaking the 3-inch concrete on Rincon Island with, quote, hydraulic claw, cutter, shear, and breaker attachments, that's from page 2-19, that'll be noisy, very noisy. The underwater noise needs to be mitigated to protect marine mammals, which the appendices show are present in the area. Third is road erosion. On the beach parcel, all 3 options will quickly erode and destroy the access road, which defeats the goal of long-term access to the causeway and the island. Page G2-25 shows Surfers Point has eroded 2 feet per year. That rate will destroy the access road. We need more options, such as re-engineering the access road as a bridge or continuation of the piling-supported causeway, or installing a structure to attenuate waves. In the Corps of Engineers Coastal Engineering Manual, page VI-5-46, shows that perforated caissons greatly attenuate waves. And the University of Miami also has research on how perforations attenuate waves. Again, other commenters can see the draft we're working on for May 15th at ourwater.us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. At this time, we have no other hands raised to speak.
If we have no other speakers, I'll continue on. This session's comment period has been concluded. Just a reminder that written comments must be received by Wednesday, May 15th, 2024. Katie, could you go to the next slide, slide 22? This slide details how to submit your comments to commission staff. This information is also provided in the notice of availability. This concludes the second of 2 sessions of the public meeting. We appreciate everyone's attendance. This meeting is now adjourned.